In this episode of Axe Tuts, we invert the major scale. Hello and welcome to Axe Tuts, the show where I talk at your face things that I know about guitar playing, music theory and more. I'm your host, Ray George. To carry on from last week, I'm going to be covering some of the theory needed in order to play over the jazz blues progression that I introduced in that week's video. Understanding modes and their application will actually cover about 90% of it. A mode is basically the name given to an inversion of a scale. Allow me to explain. In music, if you invert something, it means that you change the point of reference from which you measure an interval. For instance, C to E is a major third, given that C is the lowest note. If we invert that and make C an octave higher, making E the reference note, it is now an interval of a minor sixth. If we apply this to a major scale, therefore creating a different starting point to the scale, we say the scale is in an inversion. There are 7 different inversions of the major scale since there are 7 different notes in the scale and therefore 7 different starting points. Each of these inversions is referred to as a mode, and each of these modes has its own Greek name. Now, this is something that before making this video I questioned myself. What is the point in giving what is essentially one scale in the fact that they all contain the same notes so many different names? It just seems like it's complicating things. But the point is how they are applied, and if you can get your head around it, it is far easier to refer to them as such when applying them. Here are the 7 modes in C and their Greek names. The first mode and the parent scale is C Ionian, the second D Dorian, third E Phrygian, fourth F Lydian, fifth G Mixolydian, sixth A Aeolian, which is also the relative natural minor scale, and the 7th B Locrian. Now, to explain the application. As you should know, each diatonic chord to a scale is labelled using Roman numerals. In the same way, each mode can be labelled as such, which hopefully gives you a bit of a hint as to how they can be applied. Each mode relates to a diatonic chord, so when you're playing one of the diatonic chords, you can use its related mode. For instance, if you're playing over G7, you would use G Mixolydian. Applying the modes like this will convey the related chord that you're playing over. Each mode can basically be thought of as a melodic representation of its related chord, as it contains each note of the chord plus its harmonic extensions 9, 11 and 13 at the 2nd, 4th and 6th degrees of the scale respectively. Since this does only cover about 90% of the jazz blues progression, I won't be using it over that in this video. I'll cover that in a few weeks. I'll start with something maybe a little easier, the 2-5-1 chord progression. This is one of the most common chord progressions in modern music, so it's a good idea to know how to play over it. In the key of C, the chords are D minor 7, G7 and C major 7. So over D minor 7 we would use D Dorian, over G7 we would use G Mixolydian, and over C major 7 we would use C Ionian. Here's an example. As I said previously, we could simply say that the C major scale is being used over the entire progression, and that would be true, but it helps to use the modes, as you can see if we analyse what I just played. Chord notes are played generally on the beat, while their extensions, and if used other approach or passing notes, are used in between. This strengthens the chord and creates harmonic movement that is the same as that of the chords. Personally, I find this method far more pleasing than just playing as fast as possible regardless of the changes. In order to get used to the modes, they should be practiced in the same way as any other scale. Since they are all based on the major scale, you should already know all the fingerings from episode 2, and the ways in which they can be practiced also from that episode and other episodes. So that's it for this episode. I hope you've gained an understanding of modes and how they can be used. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you want to keep up to date, and please share them with your guitar friends. If you have any questions or other comments or suggestions, you can leave them in the YouTube comment section or on twitter.com/RayGeorge. And you can also now follow me on SoundCloud, where I'll be posting some of the audio from these videos and maybe some more. I'll post a link to that in the description.